And now, in studio, bringing his Midwest values from the Show Me State to the land of San Diego. He's a triple threat, licensed as an attorney, mortgage broker, and a top producing realtor who's crushing the competition. Here to deliver you what's happening in the trenches of the market. Your host, Michael Gaddis.
Welcome back to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170 The Answer. I am your host, Michael Gaddis of michaelgaddis.com and frontierloangroup.com. My next guest is a private fiduciary. And, you know, I've become recently kind of really enthralled with private fiduciaries because I will tell you something, in my own personal life, I never had an appreciation for what they did until recently. My father, as a lot of you know, has been diagnosed with dementia. And he's 67, he's going to be 68 next month, and his dementia is actually progressing much more rapidly than what they originally had told us. And he doesn't have a lot of assets in his life, but I will tell you that because I have a really interesting relationship with my father, because he was missing from my life for so many years, actually like 24 years to be exact. I didn't know if he was alive or dead or anything like that, but when I did find him again, you know, he was in okay shape, and then recently he's been developing this dementia. Well, we're the only people, my sisters and I are the only people that he has left in this world. And when, you know, he started getting the dementia, all of a sudden the mound of paperwork that was involved with trying to talk to his doctors, with trying to get in touch with his, you know, all of the bills that he has to pay, all his creditors, It literally is mind-numbing. And I know that I have stressed planning for a long time on the show. I'm always saying plan, plan, plan. But I can tell you with personal experience that my life is exponentially more difficult now because of lack of planning that my father had in place for his current condition. And no, he did not believe that he was going to get dementia. He never thought, hey, one day I'm going to get dementia, I'm just not going to plan. He just didn't know it. And that's why I say you need to plan for these things in the event that they do occur. Nobody wants to get dementia. Nobody wants to get into an accident. Nobody wants to develop these types of things. But it's important for you to really think about what could happen to you and how you're going to make your life and everyone else's life a lot easier if you just plan. So anyway, I've asked Chris Cooper to come in. He's a private fiduciary. Thanks for joining us today, Chris.
Thank you, Michael.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your background first. You know, you gave me a little breakdown, and you've worked for 33 years for elderly adults and special needs children, isn't that right?
Yes, that's how I started. I started primarily working with the elderly right out of college, and haven't looked back ever since. And then the special needs children started coming along because many of these elderly couples, I would find, were supporting and caring for a special needs child, which is now an adult and oftentimes cannot fend for themselves. So it became a situation where not only having one client, but ended up with 2 and 3 at the same time in the same household.
Well, why don't you tell us a little bit, what is when we use the term special needs, what are some examples of people who have special needs?
Well, special needs, by the legal definition, is a type of trust which is made in order for the person to be able to qualify for public assistance under Medi-Cal, for private housing, things like that. But we tend to just call the group as a whole special needs whenever it's a person who's disabled under the age of 65, who may be disabled by birth, could be from an auto accident or chemical accident or industrial accident, could also come from mental health problems, and they may develop later in life, or from drug addiction and alcoholism.
Or dementia.
Dementia is, you may see dementias set in early. I've had cases where we'll see women in their 40s with Alzheimer's disease and early onset, but their lives tend to be very short after that. Generally, when a person gets it in their 60s, they'll decline, but they'll live a lot, still a fairly normal life expectancy. And then we're being told now in the news today, you know, that basically we've shaved a little bit off the life expectancy on the white race because we're seeing more suicides and more drug related deaths. but it's still statistically not really there yet. So we're still saying that a male tends to live to be about 76 and a half years of age, and a woman around 81. But as you get older than 65, you live that much longer. So it's kind of like you hit 70, you're likely to live to 85. You hit 75, you're likely to make it to 90. So with people with Alzheimer's disease in particular, which is the greatest or largest form of the dementias, which we now call neurocognitive impairments, just as a group, that group tends to live longer. And that's one of the difficulties, because that's a long period of long-term care that we have to work with.
But you know what's terrifying about dementia? Do you know that we're looking, because right now we have my father in a facility that's kind of just a assisted living facility where he has his own little apartment. They come in and they give him his medication, make sure he takes, his stuff. But now they have to move him into that, we've been told, because he had a big relapse. He had a big slide, they called it. And they said that we might have to put him into a more restrictive facility. And do you know that in those restricted facilities, I've been told they don't put mirrors up? And the reason they don't put mirrors up is because there comes a time when the person will look in the mirror and not recognize themselves. And they will start screaming in terror because they don't know who that person looking at them is. Can you even imagine what kind of an existence that is?
Oh yeah, and then the other problem we run into is the linoleum floors in these places and the fluorescent lights. It creates all this glare. And a person with Alzheimer's disease in particular gets into two-dimensional visuals after a while. They get where they can't see depth very well. So you notice them kind of walking like on their tiptoes, and it's almost a dead giveaway the person has Alzheimer's disease. You can tell by their walking. So it's an interesting fascination. It's something that I studied in graduate school. That's why I can talk about it like that. And it helps me in the work that I do when have to take charge of a person, either by court appointment as a conservator, or when I'm appointed as their fiduciary in legal documents such as wills and trust and powers of attorney for both financial matters and for healthcare matters.
Well, why don't we talk a little bit about that? What is it exactly? What does a private fiduciary do, and how do they get these responsibilities?
Well, private fiduciaries in the state of California are licensed professionals. We've been licensed now since the year 2009. We have to go through a very extensive background checks and have to have a certain undergraduate education in it, so it's more of a certificate, if you will, similar to like a financial planner has as a certified financial planner to have a certificate. Don't necessarily have to have an undergraduate degree, but it's a part of an undergraduate degree in education for it. And fiduciaries kind of come in different molds. You see a lot of the fiduciaries work primarily as court-appointed people working as conservators. That term is kind of foreign to people. Most people know the word guardian. They've heard that term before in other states. Our state uses the word conservator when we talk about an adult, but it still means basically the same thing. We're going to appoint someone as a guardian, meaning that we're going to appoint someone else to make the adult decisions for this adult, because this person can no longer do it for themselves, or they're a danger to themselves or to others. Now, in the case where you're talking about your father here, Michael, it's like, so far he's cooperative and he's being able to help you to do things, and he's probably still very lucid, so he's able to do some of the legal planning, such as being able to do powers of attorneys and perhaps fund living trusts and things like that. Oftentimes, though, that's when you go past that point where they can't do those things, that's where we end up in the courts, and that's where we end up in front of a probate judge. And that's primarily the job that you see most private fiduciaries doing, is being conservators of adults. I tend to do more planning. I like to try to see if we can reduce this problem before it happens.
Well, after the break, we're going to continue our conversation with Chris Cooper of chriscooper.com about private fiduciaries and the importance of them. And the question we're going to ask him is, why not just use your children? After the break, you're listening to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170, The Answer.